Hello, I am Lisa Gardner, CEO of OMS Strategic Advisors and host of the Uncompromised podcast, where we have an unwavering commitment to values, beliefs, authenticity, integrity. It brings heart and care to an organization. Welcome to a very special episode of the Uncompromised podcast, where we're celebrating the remarkable journey of two distinguished guests that not only share a remarkable professional lineage, but they share a family lineage as well and a bond. This is Terrence and Tim Maiden, twin brothers who have made indelible marks in their respective fields. Terrence is the trailblazing chairman of the Maiden Foundation and a real estate development maestro. He has been the driving force behind transforming communities, dear father, and transforming projects through his visionary leadership and dedication. And he's been an upliftment to the neighborhoods and the reimagining of spaces, such as the shops of Redbird Mall. Beyond bricks and mortar, his work breathes life into the heart of Dallas. In step with Terrence's strides, also, there is Tim Maiden. He is a titan in the banking and education sectors. His tenure in finance and his innovative academic contributions at UNT Dallas showcase a commitment to forging paths for aspiring business professionals. Tim's influence extends through the board leadership, leaving a lasting imprint on various community organizations. Together, Tim and Terrence Maiden, they embody the essence of leadership and the spirit of community transformation. As we delve into their shared history, from collegiate football triumphs to individual accolades and collective impact, we celebrate with them a full circle moment of having these mentors, these leaders, these two brothers on the Uncompromised podcast. Welcome, Terrence and Tim Maiden.
That means a lot. Thank you.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I appreciate it. I received that. I received it.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Well, I want to start off with my first question. And this is a question actually that was posed to another guest that will be coming out in season 2 as well with both of you. But, Dallas seems to be full of big thinkers and change makers. And in general, what have you noticed about people who are capable of initiating change? And on the flip side, why are some hesitant?
Mm-hmm.
And what do they seem to compromise the most?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I can go first. I think the change agents that have made tremendous impact, you think about locally, but also just throughout history, have had a couple of attributes that I think are very important. One is courage. So the willingness to go and to the places of the unknown and willing to risk it all for what they believe in to create change. If you think about like Martin Luther King Jr. and the sacrifices that he made and all the other leaders during the civil rights era, they were very bold. They were courageous, and they were passionate about what they believed in and about their freedom. The second trait I think is really important is the willingness to think outside the box. Particularly in this era where technology sort of dominates and there's access to a lot of different things, but having that sense of focus and that forethought, like what can I solve and how can I solve it differently? Is there a path that hasn't been taken that could lead to the results that we're trying to achieve?
Yeah, I guess for me, I like that, Terrence, a lot for as courage. I think another trait that I think is critically important is conviction. I think that there has to be a deep-seated calling and purpose and intentionality there, and either they recognize or perceive injustice, or they recognize and perceive a necessity of something, and it's this continual calling, assignment, if you will. And I think when people begin to function and operate with this weight of conviction, right, this weight of responsibility, it's more focus. It's more it's undergirded with a lot of intentionality, and what Terrence first stated for us, conviction. Courage. Because if you're convicted by something, even if you don't, you're like, man, I don't even want to start this path. I know it's going to be a challenge. I know all this resistance, and it's going to require courage. It's going to require kind of stepping outside the box. And so, but yeah, I think that's a critical element.
Yeah, I think both of you are right on point when you talk about conviction and courage, and if I can even add the word boldness, because I think that is the nature of what we're needing right now. I mean, we don't have an option, it feels like, in the climate that we're living with, and living in. So, oh, I think both of you are right on point. What strategies would you say have both of you used, and maybe you are going to hit a little bit more on question one as well, but what strategies do you think both of you have used to drive change management initiatives in your leadership role? And why do you believe they have worked? Give examples if you can, but just in general, what are you seeing there?
One is sort of perseverance, and starting out in real estate development for me was very challenging. I didn't have any sort of person to glean from, or anyone who looked like me that was in the industry that I could go and get receive sort of mentorship. And it was very, very difficult. I mean, there were multiple times where I second guessed if this is the right industry for me. Should I just get out? Should I go into another path? But there were it was that inner voice that told me just to stick it out, and that things will ultimately work itself out. And I think we live in a day and age where people are so quick to jump ship. And in order to be a change agent or to see change, it's a process, and it doesn't happen overnight. That's if you want to lose weight, if you want to change anything about about yourself, or change a community, or change any sort of environment you're in. Having that sort of that level of, as Tim mentioned, conviction, but also patience, which I think is ultimately perseverance, and being willing to do the necessary work and stay, keep your hands to the plow, has worked well for me.
Yeah, I think that's great, wonderful. I think one of the things that I think when you start to develop a strategy or a strategic plan, I think you have to look at, what resources are available, right? Both internally and externally, do a true assessment of your strengths and weaknesses, and what can you offer to an organization or an entity that you create. One thing that I admire about Terrence, it's kind of funny, when he established Russell Glenn, he was really intentional for as doing a personality assessment, right? And at one time, I was contemplating joining his company. I mean, like, I've been knowing him my entire life. I mean, since I was 30 minutes prior, but I've been knowing him my entire life. And he required me to do a personality assessment, to see if it fits within the whole organization. And I think when you start thinking about who's on the bus and what seat are they going to occupy in your personal space and environment, because you want people there that's going to support you, but also hold you accountable. And I think it's critically important to figure out, okay, what assets do I bring? What are some of my liabilities? And can I invite people into my space that can offset that balance, that balance sheet, And so I think it's incumbent upon us to really do an assessment of kind of, I think on an annual basis, sometimes quarterly basis, just where you're trying to go, where am I at, assess, my surroundings, assess my resources. Do I need more? And just kind of keep, like Terrence said, keep it simple, but also, be really strategic in your direction, because you can have a lot of stuff going on and you're not making any momentum. And so one of the things that I incorporate is like quarterly ROTS, or hurdles. And I call them stretch goals, but I keep it on a whiteboard in my office. And these are things I'm trying to, I don't try to look at the whole year. I just look at 3 months, really focus on my energy towards those 3 months. And it's gratifying, because in 3 months you say, I'm not this out, and it gives you momentum to go, okay, let me go to the next quarter, right? And so I think this is attainable time period, if you will, to kind of measure progress.
Mm, that's so good. I forget the percentage, Tim, but they say there's for those things that we write down, it's a high percentage that they will be done. I find it interesting you do it in 3-month increments. That's very smart. Very smart. And then, Terrence, let me ask you a follow-up question because Tim said that you did that, 360 review and bringing your team together and bringing your organization together. What did you find out from that review? What were some of the key findings and learnings that you could share?
Yeah, I knew going out, I sort of had a clear vision on where I wanted to take Russell Glenn and the reason why Russell Glenn exists. And I thought it was critically important, as Tim mentioned, that they have the right people on the bus and in the right seats. And sort of
Mhm.
those personality assessments give you a good indication. And while I mean, it doesn't, it's not 100% accurate, but you can see some tendencies with people's personalities and making sure they're in the right seats. Like, and the other thing I think was even more important is I knew my weaknesses, and so having people around surrounding me that basically uh, could help manage my blind spots.
Right, right, right.
And so with our entire team, we do an annual review. I've invested in an executive coach for all our team members to make sure that they're continuing to grow personally and collectively as a group. And so it's worked really well. We've created a really unique team environment where everyone sort of complements each other with our skill set. So it's healthy and whole. We don't need the hand doing what the feet should be doing. And so
Absolutely, absolutely.
so it's been a good process for us.
Oh, that's great. That's great. And I imagine over time, it's good that you do a reassessment that people change with an organization. They
Mm-hmm.
grow, they morph into something else and or something that so that's great that you even do a reassessment just to make sure
Hmm.
everything's in its right place. Let me ask you, who has been your biggest source of inspiration and why?
Tim, you want to go first?
Yeah, I mean, so many to name. I mean, when I do reflections from an early age, my grandfather was inspiration just because of his uh, work, just strong degree of work ethics, his commitment to the family, his heart to give. A lot of that is kind of emulated in what we currently do, and it kind of filtered down to my father. He's strong work ethics, accountable, consistent. Those attributes kind of lingered and still rest on Terrence and I and our activities. But when you start looking at other influencers, I think Abraham Lincoln. When I study his life and the coming from obscurity and just having obviously divine influence over his steps and his ability to communicate and connect with people was so powerful. I mean, he really kind of changed the whole direction of our country, and a lot of weight was on him. He had to make very tough decisions, and so he lived in a lot of isolation too. He had a lot of enemies, but he was on the front line too. He was very courageous. He was in one was doing some research. He was in the line, caught in the fire, in battle. He didn't intend to be in the battlefield, but they snuck up behind him, and he was almost, So I mean, just him understanding, being on the forefront, grassroots level, understanding what's going on with people, and not being so disconnected, and having a heart to try to transform and to make long-term impact. So I think it's definitely had a lot of influence.
What when you said that he had, I think about emotional connection within an organization. I think I grew up in an era when I first started corporate that we were to keep what was at home home and not bring it to work, that we weren't to share or be as vulnerable in a workplace. Do you think that times have changed and the climate of work within an environment welcomes that more? Because when you talk about Abraham Lincoln and the way he was able to connect with people, I believe that I just want, how do you think the environment has changed within the workplace, or do you think it has? Is it still very separate, or are you finding that there's more success in making sure that people are okay? Um,
Yeah,
and
for me, I think, do you hear me? I think for me, I totally agree that, you have to have some degree of vulnerability. And I was reading a book on Maxwell, John Maxwell, and he was talking about the the power of vulnerability and how do you manage that, because sometimes you can be too vulnerable, and sometimes it's important to be vulnerable, right? Sometimes when you become too vulnerable, people can hurt you more, right? And so he had a really negative experience when he started in the leadership role. He wanted everybody to get attached and really became very open and personal with them. And when he decided he had to make some difficult changes within the organization, that's obviously tough. And the people that he opened up to really kind of used that to undermine him, right? And so he said the next time he had a leadership opportunity, he was going to be cold. He wasn't going to share nothing with nobody. He going to keep all this stuff to himself. But then someone approached him, another mentor, and told him that, hey, it has to be a balance. I mean, people going to follow people that they feel comfortable with, right? That they can trust, that they have this mutual respect for each other. And I think it has to be cultivated over time. It got to be cultivated with discretion. But I think it's an important element of leadership, that connectivity where they want to support you. They know who you are, and they want to be associated with that. And so I do think it calls for some degree of vulnerability and transparency.
absolutely.
Do you hear me okay?
Yes, yes.
Yeah, good.
Terrence, do you have any thoughts on that as well?
Yeah, I mean, I agree with Tim. I think that balance and guardrails and understanding other people's space too. We do live in a much different climate and environment, and so ensuring that you're respectable of other people's sort of boundaries. We also, I think, with COVID, it's created a different sort of work dynamic. Where uh, people, at least from my experience, uh, you know, don't open up as much for some reason, and I think a lot of it's from the isolation of COVID. And so coming back to work and sort of getting into a work environment where uh, people feel like it's safe, physically and emotionally to sort of share and open up, and professionally. So I agree with Tim.
Very good, very good. I was just telling Terrence earlier, Tim, when before you came on, that I have a son who's 17, a junior in high school, and I hear that you do too, as well as Terrence. And we always tell Lawrence it's not about the actual sports, that there's so many life lessons behind being an athlete. And I want you all to share, what are some of the life lessons both of you learned in sports? And how did those lessons transfer in becoming successful business leaders?
I think sports is a great platform to learn a lot of different things. For me, uh, I really appreciated the art of develop authentic relationships with people, and the grind of sports and training and working out create that deeper level of connection with people.
Mhm.
The other thing is, at our time, we went to Carter High School in Oak Cliff, and winning was a big part of what we did, and it was expected to win. We were expected to win, and so that came with a lot of pressure. And so the other thing that sports teaches you is how to deal with the highs and lows of life. That you're not going to be victorious every day. I mean, you're going to have a lot of defeats, but uh, having the strength and tenacity just to get back up and go at it again. The other thing I would say before Tim chimes in is that uh, because of our coaches demanded that we have to be at practice, you were required to show up every day. And so that's my mantra for work and my business is I want to make sure I show up every day, that I'm present, that I'm putting in the work. And I think sports was a great teacher of that.
Yeah, nothing happens unless we show up,
Mhm,
right?
mhm.
Yeah, absolutely. I can see that
Yeah, yeah,
correlation.
just to add, yeah, absolutely. Just to add to Terrence, I think
Yes.
it teaches you discipline, and I think for anyone that's going to really be great or achieve some level of success, it's been disciplined and consistent. You know, even when it's uncomfortable, even when it's inconvenient, just like Terrence mentioned, just showing up. You know, sometimes I got to get up in the morning to work out, and with my motivation, if I can just put on my shoes and get the video or the weights going, and just be present and get into that energy, that space, um, and just like Terrence before stated, like just being consistent with it and just putting in the time, making a sacrifice, being resilient, then you begin to see those results.
Absolutely, absolutely. There's so many crossover lessons, but you all hit the main ones that I believe we are discussing with Lawrence as well, our son. And just I believe that when I look at those, if I look at a Roger Staubach to an Emmett Smith, just a few that have been in, the real estate industry, I believe they've done a great job of crossing over those characteristics as well. So I wanted
Great.
to put that question with you all. Okay, so I was reading about two wins. I was
Mhm,
reading about the Maiden Foundation,
mhm,
and I was reading about the Elevate Male Leadership Academy.
mhm.
I would like for you all to share what is your vision for these three nonprofit entities? What have you accomplished? What would you like to share about those?
Yeah, I could go with that. So Two Wins was founded in actually, believe it or not, next year we'll be celebrating 20 years. So to have a foundation, uh, let alone a nonprofit for 20 years, speaks a lot to our commitment to the community. But we established Two Wins, and the mantra behind it was building communities and changing lives. And we did a lot of great work with Two Wins, in particular the first decade of the organization, from more grassroots sort of initiatives and projects. And when we hit the 10-year mark, we decided to pivot and sort of rebrand ourselves as the Maiden Foundation. So we operate truly as the Maiden Foundation, and
Oh,
uh, and so the Maiden Foundation has a similar strategy, a similar mission of Two Wins, but different strategy. So our strategy now is not necessarily to be doers, but rather funders of initiatives that we really champion. And one in particular is Elevate, which is a program underneath the Maiden Foundation that we started probably about 5 or 6 years ago in partnership with UNT Dallas. And what we saw is a glaring need to create a platform where we can engage with young men of color, to be a facilitator of ideas and concepts, but then also to inspire them and provide them with resources and tools to be successful in life. And so, Elevate is essentially a 1 week program where we host anywhere from 50 to 70 young men of color high school. And we walk them through various things that they probably just never been exposed to, whether it's how to tie a tie,
mhm.
uh, how to do an elevator pitch, professional headshots, how to hit a golf ball. We it's a pretty intense week. We do mock interviews, how to shake hands, dinner etiquettes. So it's a full gamut. And what's been most encouraging, Lisa, is seeing a lot of the guys that have went through the program and now are off to college and has graduated from college and attributed Elevate program being a part of that as one of their reasons why they're successful, means a lot for us.
Absolutely. That was my next question. What has been the results of it? So you definitely are, you definitely have experienced them going through college, coming out, and coming back and telling you this was
Mhm.
life changing. That's great. That's great.
Yeah, only thing, Lisa, when you're saying what's been one of the examples, I think Terrence and I had to speak at TCU on last Friday and
Mhm.
gave an example. At our 10-year mark, we identified a student, Kevin Bell, as our rising star. And he was at Duncanville High School. student athlete there and got a scholarship, and he was a part of the program. And we required him to do some community service and volunteer hours with Two Wins, and now, which is now the Maiden Foundation. And now he not only graduated with his undergrad, but his graduate studies. He was in San Antonio in the police department, and wanted to relocate back to Dallas, and got him connected with the Arlington, in a leadership role, Arlington Police Department. And just to see his maturation from a little kid in high school to an adulthood, and being involved in, kind of leaving that lingering impact on him, and just know that our organization had a touch point in his life to kind of influence him, and the great things that he's doing is very humbling, and just a sense of we're doing some things to make a difference.
I was talking with someone this morning, another call, a business call, but we, like so often I do with those clients that I truly, we share the same value system. They said, I wake up every morning to know that I'm not here to please man, but fulfill the purpose that the reason why I'm here, right? To fulfill a purpose that God has set before me. But, I'm glad that you cleared up just how those entities fit together. So Two Wins is with Maiden Foundation. Elevate sits under the Maiden Foundation, right? Is that what I heard correctly?
That's right.
Okay. And that was the piece I said, that's the piece where that you're intentionally leaving a blueprint. You're helping to establish the kingdom here. So I just, again, want to say congratulations. And I didn't realize it was that old, going on 20 years. That's absolutely amazing. Absolutely amazing. So
I want to add one thing real quick, is that the reason for the transition to the Maiden Foundation is legacy, right? We want our kids to get more involved. When Two Wins, it was really like twins, right? Two wins. We kind of been out twins, but we realized the mission that we want our family to contribute to this, long-standing, wanted to persist even after, just the impact, the influence, the survivability of it to linger on forever. And so that's why we wanted to be that's why we kind of transitioned to a foundation, to get the family more involved and to think long-term strategies and how we can continue to invest.
Absolutely. And it will do just that. And it is doing that. So it will continue. That's great. That's great. What part does your faith play? I mean, I know, obviously, I know the answer to this question, but I'd like for you all to verbally share that. What part does your faith play as business leaders in the many communities you serve in?
Yeah, it's for me, it's foundational. It's something that, creates a really good sense of balance. A lot of people don't know this, but growing up, we were heavily involved in church and used to sing in the church choir and known as the choir boys. And for our parents, us singing on Sunday morning was equally important to us playing on a Friday. And so we didn't feel like we put all our eggs in just the football, and we wanted that sense of balance. And so I think that has continued where, we want to do well professionally, but I don't want to lose sight of my faith and that community and philanthropic aspect. And so finding a healthy balance and knowing that you can be, the scripture says, to whom much is given, much is required. And so I feel like the more I'm given, or more opportunities that are provided to us, the more work we have to do in giving back. And so I think that has been, as I started out saying, very foundational for me, and it remains to be very foundational.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I guess just the same thing as Terrence mentioned. It's definitely foundational. I served on staff prior. I was bivocational. Served on staff at a church. I went to DBU to get a master in Christian education. I think there are some principles that I incorporate in my management of people. Trying to, I was sharing a scripture last week that I think I kind of live by, and it's Hebrews 12:1. that we have this great crowd of witnesses around us, and those who have gone on before us, and people that's watching us right now, everything that we do. And it talks about Jesus being the author and the finisher of our faith. And it talks about laying aside every weight that can weigh us down. It's only two scriptures, but it's powerful.
Mhm.
And Paul talks about finishing the race with endurance, and that it's not going to be easy, but that race has already been set before you. And so realize that, hey, every day I'm getting ready to run this marathon, this race that God has assigned for me. And there are some elements that I have to do in order for me to finish strong. And so that's the principle, guiding principle that I live by.
Absolutely.
The one thing, Lisa, that I would add, I think Tim brings up a really good point, but I think the biggest thing that my faith has taught me is grace,
Mhm.
right? And is grace personally, is grace when I look at other people, and is grace when I look at a community. You know
Yeah.
what I mean?
Yes.
So I didn't growing up, the old hymnal Amazing Grace, right? You sing it out of just because that's what you had to sing on Sunday. But as you get older, the words and resonates a lot more, and so in particular in the communities where our company invests in, because they're mostly Black and brown and people of color, and the challenges that these communities are faced with. What they're not looking for a handout, but a hand up. They're looking for someone to show them a little grace, right, and be there and stand in the gap. And so I'm really fortunate that our company has an opportunity to play a role in that and through our work. And so it's very meaningful.
Absolutely, absolutely. Well, just staying on that topic, what are you seeing that is missing in serving our Black and Brown communities? What is the biggest gap that you're seeing? I mean, from a real estate standpoint, I mean, there's several. I even think of, I think the acronym is ULI. Am I right about that? The urban.
Mhm.
Okay.
Urban Land
Yeah.
Institute.
Thank you. Thank you. And even talking with, I have a few guests from Los Angeles that I'm going to have on, but just talking about this whole gap. What are you guys seeing? I've gotten a few opinions. I've had Tamla Thornton as a guest. Kim Brown is upcoming in season 2. Just tell me what your thoughts are.
I don't know, Tim, if you want to go first, I'm happy to go first.
Yeah, you can go ahead, Terrence. You can go ahead.
I think there's a couple of things. A is because a lot of these communities were underinvested for a number of different years. Um, it's going to take us a long time to play catch up. That's just the reality. There were policies that were put in place intentionally to starve these communities of resources, access to grocery stores, exit ramps. I mean, there were so many, like, they would concentrate low income housing altogether in this one community. And so to combat that, it's going to take a fortified effort. It's going to take two or three really strong case studies on how to do it in a way that's not a gentrification play, but it's a what I like to call a gentrification, where you keep the culture there, you keep the community there, but you improve the environment around it,
Uh-huh.
and it's sort of understanding what those needs are and having really, really good strategic partners that believe in solving those societal issues, whether it's healthcare systems, if it's a grocery store, if it's a community college, if it's a corporation, finding those people that are willing to truly invest in the area to really bring about economic change, but also you create this fabric of change where I think, and this is sort of my personal opinion, but uh, it is very depressing if you're driving through your community and all the buildings are like boarded up. I mean, psychologically, I mean, it's like, where do we go from here, right? And so I think when people start seeing like people are planting flowers in my neighborhood, it creates this sort of sense of morale that the community comes alongside you in the efforts, and it gives them hope. And so we're really, we feel good and optimistic that at least some of the work that we're doing at Redbird could be a litmus test on what could be. I think that story's still being written, but I think there's some really good opportunities there.
Absolutely, absolutely. And before I ask you, Tim, your thoughts, it just came to me as well. I know you're familiar with Bonton Farms, and
Mhm.
my son went and did an interview with Darren for a project. But one of the leadership members of Bonton Farms had lived in that area his whole life, was raised by his grandmother. But you talk about policies that were put in place. He talked about the flood plain. So I'm not using the
Right.
right terminology, so help me.
Yep.
But he was talking about the floodplains, and he showed my son and showed me exactly all that the homes in that neighborhood went through
Mhm.
after a heavy rain, right?
Mhm.
And just the description of it. So that just reminded me of that. And you talk about one of the guests that will be in season 2 is also Whitney Strauss, who tries to solve the hunger issue, right? Not only in our city, but throughout the, planting gardens, similar to the Bonton Farms kind of framework, right? But I thought that was an important point, not gentrification, but do you call it
Yeah,
gentrification? Yeah, there's something to that in keeping the community, the culture,
mhm,
just uplifting,
mhm.
right? But go ahead, Tim. I'm sorry.
No, I mean, you all are raising very good, valid points. I mean, the only thing I would add is, our community continues to be plagued with inequities on a lot of different fronts. We talked about, me being more involved in the banking sector, the lack of access to capital and financial resources. For many families, the primary source of building wealth is home ownership, and just seeing how the lack of education around that and trying to hold banks, financial institutions a little bit more accountable and providing access to services for all the communities in which they serve. I think another element to kind of address is just educational gaps. I think that's one of the reasons why we established Elevate to address, the attrition rate and lack of enrollment for minority students, particularly males of color. And there's a lot of worthy organizations that's trying to address some of these issues that we have, but a lot of it is societal, a lot of it is social. I think a lot of it is still steep in ignorance, as far as not knowing what people are going through and not really concerned. I'm in this place of comfort, and so I don't want to even get involved with that, right? And so it takes people that's going to be courageous and have a conviction to create change. And so I think it's incumbent upon us to, and I appreciate your program kind of elevating some of these issues that's before us, and how do we bring solutions as opposed to criticism, right?
Absolutely. And, how do we work inclusively, even as a community? Um, when I look at major changes throughout, our nation, I always go back to the, civil rights movement. I mean, you just did not see black and brown faces trying to make change. You saw white males, you saw, black males and black females, at the forefront. I mean, when you look at the visuals and you understand the history. So, how do we get everyone inclusively
Mhm.
moving in that direction? Dupree Scoville was a special guest from season 1
Mhm.
that truly brought some things to light, very bold
Mhm.
in some things that he said. And but this is all a learning platform. And I love when you said the biggest thing you love about your faith is grace, because it's having grace to bring everyone up to speed
Mhm.
so that we
Mhm.
can all work together. But yeah, valid points, valid points. So, what is the most important lesson your parents taught you that you still remember and that you still implement to this very day?
Well, I mean, there's a reason why I call my company Russell Glenn. It's the name of the street we grew up on. So a lot of lessons. We'll be here all day. uh, Mom was really big on never forgetting where you come from, and I think she said that for a couple of reasons. One is the idea of being humble in realizing that uh, you're you're very fortunate to have the things that you have, but also remember that there is someone who's has less than you. You know, one of the things that my older brother played at Notre Dame, and Lou Holtz was his head coach. Uh, and his favorite, the quote that I remember from Lou Holtz the most is that like life is never as good as it seemed nor as bad, but somewhere in between, sort of reality falls. And so I think that sense of never forgetting where you can come from is live in reality, right? And be always willing to give of yourself to give back. But then also, you know, you set a new path for the community. And when you do, don't just leave them, come back and make sure you help someone else along the way.
Absolutely.
Yes, yeah, I guess for me, my parents would always throw out nuggets, that you still live by, right? These precepts for living, right? One of the things that it's pretty funny. We would always win in elementary perfect attendance. We the honor rolls was tough, but but we knew one thing: we're gonna be there at school, and rain, sleet, or snow, we wasn't missing. And my parents would come to the ceremony right there for perfect attendance, right? When you think about their level of support, they would travel to the games. My mom had a cowbell, so we would hear her wherever she was at in the stand. We know she was there cheering because she was the only one in the fans, in the crowd, with a cowbell. But just, the importance of family. We always had family over. We always had guests family stand with us. We always had neighborhood friends that felt welcomed. They always felt like we tried to make that space comfortable for other people. And we, like Terrence mentioned, I think having us really embedded in the church early gave us a sense of balance and priority and a desire to even serve. I think when we started Two Ends, it was really trying to do church ministry a little bit different and creatively, outside the walls of the church. So all those things had some deep influence over our lives. And again, it was just, always sharing availability too. My mom was always available to listen and to hear us and to give her perspective without making a decision for it. But once you left the conversation, she didn't tell you what to do, or my dad didn't tell you what to do, but you got a better sense of what you needed to do. And so, yeah.
That is amazing. And you have an older brother who went to. I caught that to know. So give me the siblings. I haven't read
So
about.
we're the youngest of four. So it's four boys, no girls,
Uh-huh.
and I'm the baby. Tim is older than is the older twin. So yeah, that's the only thing he beat me in was being.
That's why he says he's known you his whole life besides the 30 minutes. So there was a 30-minute gap between
Yeah.
oh my goodness. And then the older brother, is he here in Dallas, or what is
Yeah,
his
we're fortunate. Yeah, we our family are here local. Yeah, so we get the fellowship and spend a lot of time with each other. So we're grateful for that.
well, what incredible parents. Now that, I mean, I'm sure you guys have felt it too, raising kids, you realize the intentionality of parents to get your kids to where you know,
Mhm.
so incredible. I hope to meet your mother one day. Um, so what do you believe that the next generation should know and learn to lead successfully in today's business climate? And I want to respect your time, so I'm going to make this the last question. So
Yeah, can you repeat that one?
what do you believe the next generation should know and learn to lead successfully in today's business climate? Just give me, what do you think the next generation needs to know?
That's a great question. It sounds simple, but I think it's really relevant is that they need to know that they don't know. You know, I think the next generation, because I think they've lived with technology so much, that they're gonna have to be very, very intentional in getting to know people in a real authentic way.
Mm-hmm.
That they are going to have to uh, be even more creative and think even more so out the box,
Yes.
because the world is constantly changing around us,
Mhm.
and they're going to need to know that there's a place for their gifts and talent, and how to maximize that is the solution that they need to find, and that's the process. That's the art of blooming, where you're planted and trust in the process to sort of evolve and develop as a young person into that next generational leader.
It's great. It's great. Tim?
I think same thing. I think communicative, just being able to communicate, like Terrence said, and that you matter. The only thing that I would add is that life is a journey
Mhm.
peppered with good moments, and there's going to be down moments, and how you handle both will help you to navigate these interesting times, right? And keeping things in perspective, I would tell them to understand that things are not always as bad as it seems, and it's not always as good, but in the middle lies reality. And I think having a healthy balance of that, right, and not becoming overly burdened and consumed, where it can be mentally taxing. But don't be self-absorbed by what you're seeing on social media and everything else is trying to influence you. Have a sense of a foundation, a sense of purpose, and operate in that. And both, like we started with great courage and with great conviction.
Absolutely. Well, I just want to say thank you for taking this, time is precious, as you know. So thank you for taking this time.